I quite enjoyed my last video on the top 10 Meshuggah songs, and so I'm going to do something similar, but a little bit different. I'm going to be talking over the next few weeks about Ghost albums. I'm going to go through each album's tracks in my order of preference, and I'll just be talking about why I like certain tracks more than others. You will probably see over the course of these videos that I prefer a particular era of Ghost. The fact I've already made videos on Meshuggah and talked about my love of Gojira tells you that I'm someone who likes heavy music, but I come from a classical music background, so I have an appreciation for all kinds of good music. At least that's what I think. So this week we're going to start with Opus Eponymous, Ghost's first album. I'll be going through these in order, releasing one each week. So if you want to make sure you don't miss the next albums, because I'm sure your favourite, with all due respect to this album, probably isn't this one, even though I do really like this album, and it's one of my favourites and always has been since I've been listening to Ghost. So if you want to hear me talk about your favourite album, you're going to have to make sure that you subscribe to the channel, and that way you will see the video when I release it. So that just sounds like a sensible decision that has no vested interest in me promoting whatsoever. So, Opus Eponymous. This album is the shortest album. I think it's only about 40 minutes long, and that always makes it feel like a sweet treat. You can put it on, it doesn't last too long. It's very efficient. You don't feel like there's much filler, or at least I don't anyway. And one thing that's quite nice about this album is the fact that it's about one thing. There are some devil worshipy songs to get over what flavour of music and band Ghost is, but throughout this album there is a story being told about the coming birth of the Antichrist. And this is probably the best Ghost concept album that exists. It's hard to really accurately describe any of the Ghost albums as concept albums, but the concepts that they do have, Opus executes the best out of any one of these. So I won't be ranking the instrumentals because they're not really songs and there's not too much to say. So to briefly mention Deus Culpa, this is the opening to the album, and it's this reversed piano song, or organ. I've never actually reversed it to hear exactly what it is, but it has this slow burn to it and a very warm feel, and it does its job, it gets you into the album. So in 8th place, we have Genesis. It is a shame to have to put this last, but something has to go last, and unfortunately, it's Genesis. There would have been a time when I would not have put this last and would have put some of the other songs beneath it, but I now see more value in a lot of those songs, even the ones I didn't really like many years ago when I first listened to this. There are lots of things to like about Genesis. I like its triplet feel, the sort of 12/8 thing going on, and I like how it starts off with a synth and then gradually, as the instrumentation builds, it becomes more human, so it goes from digital, from synth, to ultimately an acoustic outro. It is quite epic and it has this galloping feel. Even though it isn't using a gallop, the triplets are what's giving us that feel. But it is ultimately not as grand as instrumentals that Ghost would go on to do, and doesn't offer nearly as much as any of these other songs do. Another thing to say about this album, which I completely forgot to mention, is that the production on the studio release is not great. I think a lot of the times the heavy sections sound too thin, and the vocals don't seem as present as they should do. You can really tell this was their first album because the production quality is quite a bit lower than the others. I can still hear each part perfectly fine, and individually they sound well recorded, but when put together it seems to not work as well as future albums would do. And I have found that the best way to listen to this album is by listening to it on a turntable with my limited edition Ice Blue record. And my turntable runs slightly quick, that's actually how I like it. So the tempo is slightly increased for all of these songs, and I can increase the bass in my preamp. At number 7, we have Stand By Him. So first of all, this song is groovy. I've never really been a huge fan of this song. I do like how groovy the riff is in the verse. I'm not so much of a fan of the carnal lust section. It's okay. It offers something slightly different, but it does have this weird feeling that we do it and then have to find an awkward way back into the song. The chorus is also fine, but it's not very catchy in my opinion. It's one of the weaker choruses Ghost have come up with. This song feels like it was built around the verse riff because that is really good and the rest of it is just fine. Highlights of this song are that verse riff and the guitar solo at the end doing the vocal melody. The problem I have with this song is it just sounds like a normal average song from any other band, but at least it has a couple of things that are different enough about it to keep my interest. At number 6 we have Prime Mover. This song also has a cool verse riff. I like the triplet rhythm that the rhythm guitars are playing, and I like how it builds into its chorus as well. But the chorus never really feels like it's that big or that memorable. The standout part for this song is the Father Waiting in Tomb section. That's definitely the best bit of the song, and always what I'm looking forward to listening to whenever I hear this song again. Unfortunately, that is quite a short part of this song, and the rest of it is perfectly enjoyable, but not particularly engaging, and the vocals at the end are quite funny as well. At number 5, we have Death Knell. Death Knell is a good song. There's interesting uses of samples like audio recordings in this song, so it uses a thunder sample at the start of the song and a bell sound as well throughout. That's quite unusual for Ghost. I can't think of many times they've used recordings like that in their music, and I can't help but feel like the use of a bell, I know it's called the Death Knell, but that has to be inspired by Metallica somehow, surely. I always think of For Whom the Bell Tolls whenever I hear this song. So this song has a lot more interesting arrangement stuff going on than the previous songs on this list. For example, in the second verse when it's just bass and vocals and then the guitars drop in to lead us into the chorus, that's a really cool, clever decision. And in that chorus after the second verse, when Tobias is singing the Beast of Evil line, he goes really high, and that's higher than I think I've ever heard Ghost before. I wish we had more of that kind of vocal delivery. It's one of those weird things where I think the vocals were probably most experimental in the first record. I mean, I don't know how difficult it is for Tobias to sing through that mask. It's probably a bit easier now that he doesn't have one. I'm not sure what limitation that was adding particularly, but I think he just chose not to sing in this register, which is a real shame because it's really cool when he does. The guitar solo is a bit repetitive and it is the same melody just being played over and over again, but it's really trying to accentuate the rhythm and the accents, so that rhythm section is heavy at least. Again, minor nitpicked for the song, the rest of it is great. There are some funny things lyrically, like spelling out Satan is quite funny. It's just so overt, all of the messaging, it's so obvious. Ghost would go on to become quite a subtle band with the way that they criticise religion and highlight their worship to the devil, but in this album it's just not subtle at all, which I find quite funny. And I wish actually that they would preserve this tongue-in-cheekness about the devil worshipping lyrics, because as we go on, especially to more recent records, and I'll talk about this when we get there, but it is quite difficult sometimes to distinguish Ghost from any other Christian music. At number 4 we have Satan Prayer. I used to really not engage with this song and not like it very much, but now I think it's a real standout on this album. There are so many parts of this song which are really great. The opening riff is very different to anything else that we've heard so far. So by the time we make it to this album, it's very different to Ritual, it's very different to Elizabeth, it's very different to Conclave con Dio. So it's immediately getting our attention in that way. The verse riff is cool and groovy. Structurally, it's a little bit different as well. It has this building section, which you initially would assume to be the chorus, but actually the chorus is revealed to be something different later in the song. So it's got a lot of variety in its structure. But the real standout for this song is the guitar solo. The solo starts off dark and moody, and then it opens up to become much brighter. This is a bit similar to how Faith approaches its two guitar solos. The first one is quite dark and the second one is a lot more open and harmonized and brighter in tone. So it's cool to see Ghost using that same idea here earlier on. In fact, the brighter part of this guitar solo in Satan Prayer is a great moment from this album and actually one of my favourite moments in all of Ghost's discography. It is quite strange how the song ends with this synth coming in, but I don't mind it. It's a bit weird. I do think it's a bit out of place, but it kind of feeds into the campiness of the album, so maybe it does work. At number 3, we have Conclave con Dio. So first of all, we need to address the fact that this song was not included in the Right Here, Right Now live album release, even though it was played. And that really frustrates me because this song is really good. And actually, for a lot of people who've been recommended Ghost and listened to it from the first album, this is the first song they've heard from Ghost. This is like the beginning of the journey. So it's quite significant in that way. I'm pretty sure this was the first song from Ghost I'd actually heard because Ghost was recommended to me by friends, so I listened to the first album and this was the first song I'd ever heard from Ghost. And there's lots to like about it. I love that it's in triplets, so it has this 12/8 time signature feel going on. It has some moments where the bass really is allowed to shine. It has a really nice melodic guitar solo, and I love when the title of the track is being sung. It's sung by these different vocals with different harmonies in there and different voices. This is one of my favourite stylistic things about Ghost when they decide to do it. When they decide to have choruses, as in choral sections, more than one singer, like a choir, and especially a lower register choir, like a deeper tenor or countertenor choir, I think it lends so much authenticity and credibility to their sound as a satanic band. Historically, that musical timbre has been used to represent religion in many different ways, and so it's really clever to use that here. If you're representing an anti-Catholic church, a demonic Catholic church, then you should have your own hymns, and they should be sang by choruses of people. It was really smart to open the album with this, and I love it when Ghost do it in the future as well. And there is this really cool part as well when the guitars get quite low, and Tobias is doing the whisper vocals as well to indicate secrecy, and all of these things that feed into what you traditionally associate with the devil. This is, in my opinion, what Ghosts do best when they're representing the devil through their music. And they do it most effectively in this way. I know it can be done, and they have done it well through more accessible music and more pop sounding songs, but songs like this are what I listen to Ghost for. This is what they provide that other bands simply don't. So at number 2, we have Ritual. So Ritual offers us the best of both worlds. It provides us with a dancey, conventional song. It starts off with a bright tone, a bright guitar tone, and it sounds like it's going to be maybe like a glam rock song or a happy rock song, and then it immediately stops and brings us down to these distorted guitars, something that we more traditionally associate with metal, and then gets us going with the main riff of the song. And this main riff is very good. It does sound very Symphony of Destruction, which is good because I like Megadeth and I like Symphony of Destruction, but the vocals are, well, I wouldn't say better because I love Dave Mustaine, but Tobias's vocals are definitely different enough and more pleasant, I think we could say. But even though Tobias is bringing us these pleasant vocals, he's not afraid to get into some quite darker vocals. For example, in the heavier section, when we are hitting the zeros and the ones and reciting the Lord's Prayer, but a variation of it to worship Satan instead, Tobias is giving us a much different vocal performance. And there's so much variety in this song. We have these bright moments and we have these dark moments and then these really dark moments. And I love how when we come out of this section, we have this really melodic guitar solo. It's a really great solo. And this guitar returns at the end of the last chorus to send us out, kind of like how it brought us in as well. This is very similar structurally to Stand By Him. Ritual is a very dancey song. This is, in my opinion, the catchiest chorus that they came up with for this album. And you can't help but listen to Ritual without wanting to dance to that chorus. You just can't help yourself. This is definitely a classic song for the band, and a live performance would not be complete without a Ritual performance. Okay, and at number 1, as you may have worked out by now, is Elizabeth. Now this may seem like a bit of an unusual choice to some people, and I will admit that the studio version of this song is not my favourite version. In fact, I think it's inferior to Ritual, I think it's inferior to Satan Prayer, I think it's inferior to lots of the songs on this album. But that is because for some reason, when they recorded Elizabeth, they recorded it at a much slower tempo than the performance that they had on the demo. So weirdly, the demo version of Elizabeth is better than the studio version. But where this song really shines is in a live context. If you speed this song up and record a heavier live rig, this song is by far the best song on this album. And that is how I've been listening to this song for a while, so that's why it's at the top. This song has the best main riff. The downbeats are so accentuated by it. It is the most headbangable song in the album. And the chorus is catchy. It's not as catchy as Ritual, but it is still very catchy. I love it, and it's always stuck in my head. But my favourite part of this song is the solo. So we play a really long extended solo, and underneath is the main riff, which is providing us with a rhythm to support that solo. And these two things together are just really great. This solo is by far the best one in the album. And actually, when you listen to Elizabeth and think of its structure, it is a structure that Ghost fell away from. They don't write songs in the way that they wrote Elizabeth anymore. Nowadays, Ghost feel very optimized in their songwriting. And actually what this allows us to do is it just gives the song space. it gives it some time to breathe and to explore some complicated ideas. It's similar to what happens in the solo in Satan prayer, and I wish that they still did that, because to the extent that they do still do that, it feels like dispensable improvisation, and actually keeping it melodic and rooted in the main riff underneath, and it still feels like it's within the song, it's part of it, it's a natural extension of the song and still confined within the structure, but it's a development, it's an exploration within that framework. That's what makes the solo feel like it really fits. It's the right combination of technique and melodic, and that's why Elizabeth is my favourite on this album. So that's Opus Eponymous. Let me know your thoughts below. Did you agree? Did you disagree? What's your ranking of this album? Stay tuned for the Infestissimum ranked video. That may already be out by the time you watch it, so go and have a look at that. Let me know your thoughts. Like and subscribe if you want to see more. And thank you all for watching.